All right. I think all systems are go. Thank you for joining this celebration of Zack Darsee, the recipient of the 2025 Tom Lafarge Award for Innovative Writing, Teaching, and Publishing. My name is Philip Ording, and my fellow award committee folk would like to join me in welcoming you. Those are Wendy Walker, Corinna Bardoff, Sam Goodman, Michael Kowalski, Daniel Levenbecker, and Eliza Grace Martin. Just before we get started, I want to share a little bit about what we call the Tom Award. Thomas S. Lafarge was an author, educator, publisher, advocate, and friend. I met him and Wendy at Proteus Gowanus in Brooklyn, where they founded the Writhing Society. The Writhing Society was a constrained writing workshop that was free of charge, or essentially so. I don't remember what the status of the $2 free wine was exactly. And it was welcome to all. At the time, I didn't realize how exceptional it was, what a rare and valuable departure from, quote, knowing writing that the workshop offered. It exemplified what Tom termed readerly writing. In an essay bearing that title, he explained, readerly writing attempts a narrative within the field, a chameleon narrative, hard to distinguish from its surround. When memories, the constellation of them, the field, history, when all these write the sentence, the writer must follow, must read. The readerly writer is readerly not in the sense that she's very literary, saturated with the work of other writers, but in the sense that the process of composition is for her an experience of reading. Where is the sentence coming from? The experience is of its coming, not as a form to contain a meaning, but as a lively creature. Reading this passage brings me to Usage, the grammar workbook he prepared for students of English at Horace Mann, where he taught for many years. Specifically, exercise number 5, from Words to Watch Out For, which instructs the student reader, if the sentence is correct, write C, the letter C. If there is an error in word usage, correct it. Number 5, do the many allusions to birds and chameleons in this book infer that Dr. Lafarge and his colleagues are raising these exotics? Beyond this humorous image, which somehow I suspect Tom's students would have had little trouble conjuring, but some of them here can tell you, the error prompts the reader to momentarily imagine the inferences of birds and chameleons. The workbook itself is a work of constrained writing. I really only realized as I was putting these words together, from which several creatures evolve. There's, to name a few, Mr. Screw'em-Up, Sonia Pistoff, and my favorite, Otto, the drunk. My experience, Tom writes in the preface for the teacher of the book, Usage, is that grammar is far more easily learned than taught. And that reminds me that something else I didn't realize when I wandered into the Writhing Society was how valuable Tom was as a teacher. Wendy told me I should say an anecdote, or at least that's what people like in welcoming remarks. So I'll say one that I remember, which I feel is clarifying, I hope, to this notion of serious play, which Tom was all about, and might be misinterpreted. I misinterpreted it once. This is what happened. So we would sit around this little table writing in Brooklyn somewhere and moved around, and it was very convivial. the introductions were as precise and brief as the ones that I've given in Tom's workbook usage. And we would have a task and we would go about it, and then we would share what we had written. And once I sat next to Tom, and like a lot of us, kind of marveled at what he was able to do in a small amount of time with very little means. So I thought, and so I said, hey, because he had said something nice about something I'd written. I said, do you want to trade? And he looked at my writing and his, and he said, no, thank you. And I understood at that time that this was not some volunteer, good-willing exercise that he was doing, as a retired teacher for the community. It was really serious what he was doing, and it mattered. And I hope that we will see some of his writings. I hear that's maybe a project of the that, like the award that we're here to celebrate, that Wendy and some of us are involved in. So the plan for the evening is that we're going to hear a little bit more about the recipient, Zack Darsee, and then hear a conversation. And then we'll have some time, I think, afterwards for a little bit of a reception. Join me in welcoming Wendy Lafarge to the podium.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this doing the thing it's supposed to do?
No.
No? No, okay. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I think he would too, or he does, yes. I'm going to begin by talking a little bit about Tom and his talent for making counterintuitive decisions. He had a way of deciding in favor of a course of action that seemed obviously wrong to many people who cared about him. I will describe 3 instances of this. The first happened before we met in his last year at Harvard. He was president of the Lampoon and had worked on many of their famous parody issues. 2 of his Lampoon friends, Doug Kenny and Henry Beard, came up with the idea of launching the National Lampoon. They asked Tom to join them, but he refused. He wasn't sure at that point exactly what he wanted to do with his life, but he knew he didn't see tying it to that type of humor. The fact that very few people would have had the nerve, not to say the wisdom, to turn such an offer down has never been lost upon me. The second decision occurred soon after we met. It had to do with whether Tom would leave New York City to take an academic teaching job. Such a move would have meant losing custody of his son, Paul, but Tom always said that wasn't the main reason he stayed. To give up New York with its art and experimental theater scene turned out, when he thought deeply about it, to be too high a price to pay for a foot on the academic ladder. I was happy about this decision and still think it was the right one. I have to explain the third decision, if you can call it that, because it was very hard for me to understand at the time. But since Tom's death, I have come to see that it was correct. After we returned from living in Morocco, he began to write a novel inspired by that world. As he mapped out the story and its large cast of characters, the book became 3 books related in a Balzacian manner, with a large cast of characters, with the main characters, one cropping up in a subsidiary mode in the others. He worked on the 3 books, sometimes alternately, sometimes simultaneously, over a period of 20 years. His ability to defer the gratification of publishing impressed me, but also made me a little crazy. I now understand why they took so long to write. There is simply nothing else like them. Tom's uncompromising values, the preeminent importance of place, time, and independence for the creation of one's best work, hover over the committee as it evaluates candidates. These values entail a healthy skepticism about the necessity of an academic affiliation for a writer, trust in one's inner vision over influential teachers and fashionable theories, and a willingness to create social structures in a community rather than relying exclusively on institutionalized ones. Now I come to Zack Darsee, this year's honoree. Zack was born in Boston, but spent a large part of their childhood in Texas. While a teenager in Austin, they experienced a sense of exclusion from the literary offerings of the university and began to form their own poetry events among members of the community similarly excluded. When they went on to Oberlin, they studied ancient Greek and poetry with the poet and novelist Kazim Ali. Upon graduating, they moved to Berlin, where they met Nadia Marcus and jointly founded Tabloid Press. Berlin would become home, but for some years, Zack shuttled back and forth between Germany and Texas. They worked at the ATM Gallery in Austin, an artist-run space, making books and teaching free poetry workshops. When they returned to Berlin, they did the same thing there. In 2015, Tabloid Press released its first publication, a newspaper priced at 25 cents. I have a copy here. This example is from the collection of the poet Daniel Baker. On the outside, they printed the names of all their friends. On the theory that this would entice those people to read it. The text on the inner pages is credited to no author. This whimsical production, attractive to the eye, and fun to explore, hints at the inventiveness that will characterize later work from the press. One of my favorite tabloid products from this early period is Zack's first collection, 16 Poems by Zack Darsee. And this also is from Daniel's collection. Thank you, Daniel. Let's see. As you can see, it is boldly printed in an oversized format. The binding consists of a single metal ring and various types of paper make up pages. Some are various types of paper which are sometimes opaque, sometimes translucent, sometimes shiny or matte. No two consecutive pages are made of the same paper. As a literary object, it constantly surprises, is easy to handle, and a pleasure to peruse. In 2018, Zack began teaching English as a second language in Berlin and found it reignited their interest in grammar, first stimulated by the study of ancient Greek. Grammar became a material focus of their poetry, something to be played with as though it were a literary substance mixed with clay. After an inspirational workshop with the poet Vicky Now, Zack decided to enroll in the MFA program at Notre Dame, where they studied with Joelle McSweeney and Johannes Goranson. Their first chapbook, Bell Logic, was published by Spiral Editions, and in the same year they received the Hazo Poetry Prize for their thesis manuscript, Double Uncle, or What to Do About the Wife. In 2021, they met their present collaborator, Elise Husek, and during this time, they began translating the poet and performance artist Mara Genschel. Several literary projects, including those translations, are at various stages in the publication pipeline. In 2025, Tabloid Press received funding from the Berlin Senate. Zack is presently in residence at the Art Farm in Marquette, Nebraska, where they are extending their writing practice to include interactions with video and sculpture. So that's the biographical side. Let me say a little bit about their writing. Zack Darsee's work deals with the metamorphic body. The boundary between the body and the objects of everyday life remains porous, but a locus of struggle. The poet's environment is infested with machines and office equipment. They manage this situation by imaginatively melding their body with copy machines, screens, video games, cars, and then, in desperate rebellion, with a set of professional elves. The poet and their co-workers win an unequal contest by eroticizing the office machines. This is from Biography. Workers splice the photocopy chute with other orifices. Out come immersive, douched texts, language smells. In another poem, the office melts into the sea and becomes an eye. A cubicle in the ocean winks in and out of existence. A witty nod to Keats's magical casements opening on the shores of perilous seas. In a poem called Look, the poet mates with a briefcase. But as the briefcase swallows them, it changes into a grammatical case, and this invokes a struggle. You may recall that grammatical case deals with determination, especially with number and gender in pronouns. Later, the briefcase has become a corporate hazmat suit. I put it on in my belligerent posture, the way I send an email. I have to write inside this hazmat suit. It takes a long time to pretend to get it off me. The poet also rebels against the dazzling but disembodied words on a tiny screen by insisting upon being an eager rose. From all this phosphorescent texting, allow me to open the curtain and expose my thorn. The poem goes on to explore how the body survives and expresses itself in a world of omnipresent screens with their unrelenting candy colors and emoticons. In an odd turn, aggressively sexual gay angels appear on the scene to rescue light from electric compromise. Archangels line the boardwalk, pacifisting their photons. Other revisions of Christian iconography include a female character named Pope, who uses a carpet of woven flowers to prove the radical excess of God. In another poem, the dynamic of sex is obliquely figured by juxtaposition. Two guys jogging, mice diving in a haystack, a city blurred then focused. Zack's collaborative piece with Elise Husek, From the Pocket of Agent Dickinson, takes us into more continuous jazz language. The vowels and rhythms evoke a singing voice that unites the fractured imagery. We seem to be on a road trip, and everything we are passing is reflected briefly in the various chrome and glass surfaces of the car. Everything morphs very fast, and we can only let the colors and shapes wash over us. They come to a motel where the objects in the room reflect each other so manically that the poet has to make a conscious decision to coexist with them. A message from heaven says, "Remain calm." This direction goes on to adopt the passive-aggressive nature of a phone, for the next instruction is dual. Allow, shoot. The poet obeys, but also allows damp recorders to witness the moment. Again, the erotic self succeeds in co-opting the neutral and alien machine. When they move on to another motel, the furniture morphs into landscape. Crop circles appear in the carpet, and there is a beautiful feeling of home. The poet is targeted by mythical beings who reside there and sets forth on a quest. There are no shadows, so I follow a path marked with blue arrows. I cut along the arrows as I go. Big flaps of what seem like balloon fabric break and flop like skin. It is light bubbling. In the absence of rooms, there are elf demonstrations. A bunch of elves are standing in front of projectors and pointing at various aspects of decomposition. They appear happy but professional. The poet takes one of these elves and presses it into their eye. I think Zack's poetry will encourage all of us to do that. So please join me in congratulating the Sears winner of the Tom LaFarge Award. I know Tom will be very pleased. Your turn.
Wow, that was beautiful. I'm like taken aback. I haven't had so many opportunities to have people actually write an introduction for me, and also it's kind of weird for me. I just wrote this introduction kind of quickly, and it's kind of weird for me to give an introduction in general to my work. Rarely do I come to a stage having even performed or practiced my work, and definitely not with some explanation of what I'm going to do. In general, I'm often shy in the role of speaking with authority before an audience, even though I do this a lot with Nadia Marcus, my... Oh, I'm nervous. I'm going to move this up a bit, yeah. Anyways, usually I let her do the talking because she's very glamorous and elegant, you know. I usually lean against the wall somewhere and just smile and nod. In general, I prefer to put on the mask the text itself affords and go from there. It's like in this poem by Alejandro Pizarnik called Cold in Hand Blues. And what's this you're going to do? I'm going to hide behind language. There are a few things I want to say before I get started. First, an enormous thanks to the committee here and to Wendy and Eliza in particular. And obviously to Tom for farging a path, a path to begin all of this. I can't really believe it. I feel utterly, totally honored, and I'm still a bit in shock. I'm not really the type of poet who wins prizes, I feel like. I found Tom LaFarge's work when I was teaching an online poetry workshop called Pattern, Constrain, Proceed. The workshop was a month-long experiment where participants brought a pattern, equation, a recipe, something from practical, real life, to use as a basis for creating these constraint-based procedures for a series of poems. Tom has these 3 versions of what seem to be the same poem called Ode from a Mockingbird, which appropriate birdsong phonemes into Keats's scansion and rhyme scheme, I assume from Ode to a Nightingale. Each version then becomes increasingly intelligible, replacing the phonemes then with birdsong mnemonic phrases, and then in the last poem inserting these mnemonic phrases into the syntax of Keats's original. This impressed me. It was such a thoroughly playful constraint to move from freeing the original of its meaning and into nonsensical bird sounds. I also think of Gertrude Stein's little diss to birdsong as being the closest thing to dead repetition, which always seemed really absurd to me. Like, did she not like birds? Was she not listening? And then back to Tom, to generate one poem from the language of another as if all poetry, our own, others, was just this giant compost heap of organic matter ready to fertilize the next poem. I related to this. It matches my own practice of recycling and seeding texts, and it's exactly what I try to lead people into when I teach. I immediately brought a prompt to my next class, although it was simpler, just to homophonically translate a birdsong using a YouTube video into a legible poem. But then additionally, to take that birdsong and translate it tonally, as in, consider what they are saying, the bird. With what attitude? Is it just a refrain from a pop song, a profession of love, or some shady gossip? I think it's still my favorite prompt. In any case, I found this practice of serious play interspersed with so much reference and tribute that courses through all of Tom's work, social and literary, if we can really separate the two, so deeply exciting, not only for its reverberance with mine, and that makes receiving this award even more special. So I'll read from 2 books. One is this work in progress. It's roughly titled Oops, I. And this one started gestating when I learned about the double slit experiment, which sounds like this deeply erotic thing, like some kind of euphemism or title of something on Pornhub. But it has to do with measuring light particles and how they change their behavior under observation. I'm not an expert. I don't know anything about quantum physics, but I write a lot about light, I think. Other topics and phenomena that were thrown into this compost heap is TikTok manifestation methods, doppelgangers, sociology, corporate erotica, gender, and a Reddit post titled Math's Delirium While Sleeping, where students of mathematics were posting about math equations entering their dreams in uncanny ways. Apparently this is called the Tetris effect. Some of the poems here were also constructed unknowingly with similar constraints as those in the pamphlets of Tom's 13 Writhing Machines, specifically the homomorphic converters. You might notice this in the self-portrait series. The form stays the same, or the syntax more or less, but the vocabulary is kind of regenerated each time. And then the second book I'll read from, which Wendy mentioned, is a collaborative novel called From the Pocket of Agent Dickinson, which Elise and I like to call a lysergic neo-noir poet's novel, which is actually out now, I think like this week, from Inside the Castle. So it was written with Elise over like 2 years, and it also uses a very specific constraint, like a very, very simple constraint, which is just that we wrote the whole book, or like 97% of the book or something, writing one word for one word. So she wrote one word, then I wrote one word. And then she wrote one word, and I wrote one word. And we did this in like a Google Doc on the phone with each other for like 2 hours a week over 2 years, until we finished. It's about a CIA agent, this kind of dandy named Flanagan, who's cooking all these recipes in his motel rooms while he's investigating the disappearances of the light beings, and who, over the course of the novel, also realizes that he is being dosed with LSD by his supervisor, Agent Dickinson. So that's how that goes. I'll start with my own poems. If dog is beryllium, earth metal and X-ray scraps, but I not see dog as a cosmogony. Even in ambient conditions, this is loud. No for being alpha, no for hell, yes for hell, yes for no, hello, hello. The half-life in the barn. The energy gets used up in the echo. If dog is a star, add dog to princess, make star. Subtract dog from star, get dog star. Unfortunately, the bang deed is already supernovas. If dog is dog, nothing, 7 times. Look, my body and lowercase briefcase just go together. It's just my body case goes and lowers briefcase together. It's just my body lows brief and go-getter. I love mechanical cranes. Meaning I don't live inside that case anymore. Meaning I haven't in that case anymore, will not anymore, had not more. Now look away. Case closed. I love mechanical cranes. In the box. In the box I am a little boy. All the little girls are speaking up. I am a little box with the glow of a boy, and all the little girls are speaking up all around. Little do they, boy, know for now. Boy, for now. Bye-bye. Death comes later. Hazmat suit. Never did I ever wear a corporate hazmat suit and get it off me. I put it on in my belligerent posture. The way I send an email, it gets belligerenter. The little girls arrive and wait for me to start the meeting. I have to write inside of this hazmat suit. It takes a long time to pretend to get it off of me. The little girls stand at the coffee machine to watch me. And my little girls, inside this hazmat suit, watching me, the imaginary carafe of all outfits, are little girls, girls. Once I wore a hazmat suit, and never did I ever get it off of me. Self-portrait. From all this phosphorescent texting, allow me to open the curtain and expose my thorn. That I came by way of a newspaper route is just evidence of our attachment to signs, so that an earlier struggle against getting too wet deleted us and replaced my body with an emoji, until so muted the conversation becomes 2 particles, become none. Self-portrait. With only my biology to fear, I was licking the pink aftermath of memory out of manufactured diaries that arrived from the writing factory loose leaf, knowing the literary zenith of my sex is the literary, once an organ in, call her Belief-a-Bell, now a pink doppelganger out. Meanwhile, the tucked otter of my chest went commando, styed and poop-eyed, totally pink. Self-portrait. As I signify such opulent choices by way of description, brings me to the subject of voyeurism. Though I hold the lowly position of a memo typist, may we just observe a glass of sparkling water? And when you're looking at me like a glass of sparkling water from across the open office, as you plan your strong walk over here and lean your crotch against my desk and drink, when I finally raise my eyes, so engorged on fluorescence at this exceedingly late hour, I, too, like the lights in water, twitch, drip, vanish. spy. Under a violet neon sign above the water cooler, I notice another me. Violets. This is going to sound weird. At a party, I was being found out being the way that I am being, a way of mine to be found out by all seeing or listening or sensing, that is, to be inclusive. My knees were stiff to move. I wrote the text, "This is going to sound weird," for a party for which I was being invited, for which I was to deliver, in vocal flutter, which would impose wall of laughter, that is, would disconceal the audience as the party eye currents coalesced and ran. The audience becomes violent. The oral turn to meet the suck tide of our visual fray, anti-flutter of our being. This is going to sound weird, I started. Wanting to be like him, drifting toward machines. Wanting to be like him, drifting toward machines at supermarket, a young 4 or 16 dimensions, depending on who looks in who. I look in the eye machines with his feelings. To wit, feeling him-like to all observing me means lesbians fugue me in a supine shift into legibility, not wanting to believe in being me, him being for 4 hours or max 12. Now, in the bleach aisle, I am a peach whale yawning up hydrogen, squared, that is. Count the pillars next time, you grocery store attendants. There are mirrors, or suck the youth right out of my math mouth, my mask. Proof. It could be so easy, twisting my soul's neck when another soul's next. Except my name is up there, tangoing with it. Except this time my name is actually what I call myself up there. The vacuum. Figures dotted the mountains. We took turns pointing at them, making figures of speech. I held in my tulip a laser. Someone wanted to talk dreams. Tulips he had yesterday was only seeing himself in. A year from tomorrow I had been finishing something. We were celebrating that me, and then I dreamed I was vacuuming the lawn, and Wiener took me literally. Speaking of the figurative, I painted my body in a 3-piece suit and let pollen do the dusting on my shaded crotch. We were celebrating something domestic. If I didn't have a name, one would have to be kicked into me. It's profoundly sad that pollen particles do not have genitalia. Go figure. Okay. Can I ask someone to, time me for, how long? Give me a timer, and then I'm going to read from this. 10 minutes is perfect, yeah. Okay, this is the book. There are rules to forward. There are light beings on Flick, fresh light beings serving www.hothearts.login////.me. For visionary types, dial centipede. Digressives dial digestion. All cucks may go dial eaching or sperm loss, hairpigs. There are force fields, you pissant. Pray go. Right here. That's it. Pray go. Twirl girl? That's reductive. I am not singular. I tabloid, premature. Force fields, ferns, feral, the frequency fey, in touch with Wada screenshots, wanna blue. Hey, hey. Hey, 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 69. I'm smashing like 99 blue balloons. He, that Barcloon, bamboozles me. He is impregnably turgid, a cusp free of nothing, less snooze the moon, the Maine Coon plants, on top of furniture, there on twill, on personality manuals, on databasing chance. Where is my email? Where am I absolutely coming to now? All around, single light beings are flirting, in dyes. Denim is like one amends, though my corporate armor is my lubricant. I absolutely hurt your light beings for you, hypomantic, hard pass, piffle drone. Winter comes, in between Diane, powdered triads, parking, and paper lights. Recipe for winter. 3/4 mice, handful of chopped tree, 1 shitpost banister limed, warmies warm to pipeline, praying ants, 1 cup Bragg's 12 CE. Mix, gently, humanor, then grow, touch feather to banister, wash, 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 whoosh, whoosh. It's Sunday, girls, and I'm going lip-syncing to Eiffel 65 view. Did you even breathe or purchase the innocence requisite of this crime we are undertaking investigating? Sigh, too. I think there are stomachs, riptide flows, and if light beings were barcloons, they would twirl without cholera via asps. They would fuck without being cholera, period. Period. The light, superfluous, fingers and waists, Diane summoned and reading menus, a standard shape, sound proctor is here. I listen. Everywhere is smoked cheeses. Next to me, a blonde Pomeranian describes the delivery, only fevering during setup punch. Doolittle or die, ha 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 ha. The joke is prefigurative slop, a novice motive distresses me. Bibbs's table legs positively reposition themselves and sneezes, real nice, real conversational, easy. Say, choosing between a doctor and a submersible, which would you excommunicate? Hope, darts the Pomeranian tongues, all jiggly with it. I'm back at the hotel now. Filigreed badger towels everywhere in folds, shavings, hair, little crop circles dusting the carpet, parquet, even linoleate premiums are listed on. The guest book towels, toweling bays, and housekeeping keeps burning it. Filigreed faxes in focus, plus the phone books personified right now, sitting cross-legged by the television station. I'm sure. Diane? Is vocalization you? I shuffle my little stool pants at the documents, turn over, television station, turn over, curfew bilingual, then trisexual dams. Choo-choo, furnace, donkey chaise, this is Pop-Tart leaking. Transmissive, out. Here I am in states. In first, containment, reactions, cellulitic worst. In, for century, it seems I am air, and the honorary surplus division of cooking with mud, sometimes raisins, and electrocution air, dry air moving about tops of steaming white-capped pork pies, such asses as Mr. Plurris turned to vial and vials of dream sludge, lasagna, proctor, and everything gets let lousy. Of pillage, curious now in Wobblyville, the special lock store, body shop, trad post, my initial condition deters concentration, of course. But I suspect air poisoning in the slightest positions in and around Vallicellen, the dame of all light beings. It is and is not superfluous, my condition. For the first time I see. At least the way rings see on teleprompters through the screen, eraser, manual dog wannabes restart sequences of prophecy, foreplay, and give the impression I actually give a tucked shirtwaist for them. The little higher rakes, piss, piss. Do you transcribe chiffon if your hairpiece sires a shank? What we need, what we desperately need in contrast to corporeality foreplay is shapes, cutouts, projectors, photocopiers, photoreals, snippers, photo shanks, light bulbs, and chip clips, kinky agents, divas. You know you're chippy when a wilted ass solves and proves an abstract equation. Disgusting. A mailroom disgust. I call Diane, it's business. Tradition ligaments the search for hours, and Melon wants water organism, poultices, water glove relax, sippy safe with drops, any safer she'd hide down smells and break up into bite-sized cakes. Have you digested? Rocks. I tell Diane, I have not. This proves itself in Schadenfreude, our purpose caught is pining, tells. I assemble 3 folios in the dropper Agent D fed at beginning. Little smiles arise around my dropper debut, curbing phonetically as if the dope wasn't something I ate. Chose to, not technically, was tricked, blimey. Who forgot the self, my purpose become elf. Agents surrounded my presentation and I thought I died. Down a tree. Inside myself, light beings revealed what had actually occurred. The LSD was used to firm my physique, mind, handcuffs, and pretty much everything about seeing. That was LSD peeking through shapes, vapes put swankily. It is Agent D. Enter blasphemy. I will get back at Agent D. I sneak under the fence, outside my motel apartment. I know where Agent D is sleeping. She sleeps under the ground. I'm wearing multiple layers of protection. I hear something. I organize the wires very carefully. I organize them to penetrate her nightgown. Her nightgown is her laminated credentials. It's also my chance. Sparks fly and luster. Elf bones break off. My wires reach her brain. It is a brain of nothingness. In there go the dictionaries. The dictionaries will help. I did not forget the syringes either. Everything inside her is dancing. I can't help getting a little excited. Everything inside her is like a wild beast. She winks. I go in.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eliza. I'm a member of the committee. And you're Zack.
I'm Zack.
Should we tell the story of how we know each other? So I don't even know if Wendy knows this, but Zack and I went to college together, and we did not know each other then. We were not friends. Mm-hmm. Hi, Tyler. But we did take one class together. Do you want to tell them what the class was?
Bowling.
We took bowling together.
It was like half a credit. It was the end, it was like one of these half credits that you needed.
We were desperate to graduate, and neither of us had completed our exercise credits.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yes. We were not in the gym. And in a wonderful poetic turn, I really tried to find this. But on the last day, the man who had led bowling gave us all a present in lieu of, you passed if you showed up. But he gave us all badges that said, "I beat my coach." Someday, I couldn't find it, but someday I will find it.
Yeah.
And
It's there in the archive.
It is. It's there in our minds. So I want to begin with kind of a searching question. And I'm going to crib another poet to ask it. A poet, Keston Sutherland, who is cribbing J.H. Prynne when he talks about how becoming a poet is kind of a traumatic destiny. That is kind of traumatic, that is kind of an inescapable bondage. And so my question for you is, when did poetic language appear to you, and what did it do to you, and what did you do with it?
My mom is dyslexic. Sorry, Mom. But I feel like this had a big influence on me, the way specifically that she uses language, and sometimes like reading stop signs as pots or something. Sometimes she flips the letters, and I think this play, but also my grandmother as well, also does this with what I think this is actually the term. I don't know if it's also just what she calls it, but spoonerisms, where also she kind of flips those letters and makes these new words. So I think there was this kind of linguistic play from the beginning that, definitely was like a delightful, I don't know if I think traumatic, I think maybe it's dramatic, as in like drama. I feel like that there is a kind of bondage to a certain like dramatic imagination and a dramatic use of language. That I feel like I feel bonded to, that I always have to be in some sort of dramatic situation. Poetry actually feels like it saves me from some of the drama of everyday life.
So this award is given to people who are innovatively either or writing, teaching, publishing, and you happen to be doing all three. But I kind of want to talk about the poems first, if that is okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your consent. When I hear you talking about this sort of like playful interaction with language, I'm thinking about how you're exploring constrained writing now. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you started moving into these particular procedures in your writing, in your current process.
I think grammar is like the ultimate constraint anyways in language. Already it's creating it's creating time. So time is a kind of like constraint. And I've always been really obsessed with grammar. I love grammar. Also, I studied ancient Greek, and then you would kind of see these sentences and how like certain words could kind of, especially with the genitive, that the declension of the word, it could apply to, usually it was about like someone's wife, but she could be this person's wife or this person's wife. And it wasn't always, in order, especially the much older texts. Those ones, the word order was sometimes more flexible. At least that's how I remember it. It's been a long time since I studied it, but I remember having this kind of aha moment of like, oh, this writing is like code. And that was such a practice then of having to decode the language. And in that, in that decoding, there emerged all of these different possible readings. I think this workshop with Vicky now, though, she taught me a lot of these, she kind of began doing a lot of these constraint-based writing, but she wasn't calling it that, she was calling it more like mistranslation. So there were these prompts where she would have us take someone else's poem and then mistranslate it. So replace every word for another word, but keeping, the syntax the same. And I think that came at a really important time in my life, and it just sunk into something that I really loved. And then I realized I could do that with my own writing. You write one poem, and then you like the form, and the form says something, and then you can keep that form and just keep writing into it. So often, like in my practice also of writing, I'll write one poem. This is why I like these versions of these odes, these birdsong odes so much of Tom's, because there's so much you can do with one poem. You can just take one poem, and then suddenly there's like all of these different clones that can come out of it. Creepy little clones.
Like the self-portraits that you read 3 times.
But I feel like a lot of my, almost every manuscript that I start kind of goes through a period where I'm also just trying to figure out what the form is or what the form means. And so a lot of the time I am just like replacing the words of one poem until I figure out what that form, like the form will shift a little bit with the replaced words, and then slowly I kind of get closer to it.
It's like a crown of sonnets, but a crown of whatever the form is that you're exploring.
Yes.
Yeah. So you live in Berlin now, and so you spend most of your time speaking and thinking in German.
No.
I
work a little bit in German. I'm so insecure about my German, and it's a very difficult language. But I do love it.
But it must be interesting for you as someone who studied languages to now live with 2 to kind of play off of each other.
Yeah. I mean, I really like also the German grammar. There's so many different things you can do with it that you can't do in English, or that in English you can do, but then it becomes much more confusing. Whereas in German, you're really like building. You can build these like interlocking kind of grids of meaning and like create these really logical structures. It's kind of like architecture or something. I think that taught me a lot about then what I could do in English rather.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about you living in Berlin in regards to Tom, because he valued travel so much. And as Wendy alluded to also in her remarks, having time and space afforded to writing. So I was wondering if there was a kind of location or dislocation that Berlin afforded your writing.
Yeah, I moved there right after undergrad, after college, after bowling. And then, and I was working as an au pair the first year that I was there, and I was taking the trains to and from the club. I was going dancing a lot. So, so I kind of had this double life, but there was this hour-long commute that I had to go from the au pair house to the club or to another part of the city or whatever. But it was kind of in a suburb. So, and there are these beautiful S-Bahn trains that are kind of the above ground trains that are very quiet, and they go in a ring. It's called the Ringbahn, and it goes all the way around the city. I think it's like an hour and a half if you take it all the way around, and then you can go around again. But it was often on this Ringbahn that I would write. And I think that first year being there and really not knowing German, I had this sense of total anonymity. I mean, I also didn't have any friends. And I think it was this experience of kind of being completely alone in the language, in my head, and then the Germans being just so quiet, and these trains being silent, you know. They were really good writing spots. It was like a library or something. But also I think when you're in this kind of like passive movement, you have things happening, but at the same time, you're still. But that was kind of like the first time that I felt like I was really writing. Even though I studied it in college, it was really like on the trains that I had this kind of, stillness.
Interesting. Yeah, I want to follow this up with a kind of open-ended question, which is like the poetry and the social. Mm-hmm. I do think it's almost written into the name of your press, Tabloid, mm-hmm. which elevates, speech, even gossip, maybe, mm-hmm. into writing, mm-hmm. and possibly elevates experience into art. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your press, mm-hmm. and readings.
Tabloid started with Nadia and I again at the club in in 2014, and really, but we were two young poets. I think it was also really feeling this kind of gender liminal space. I mean, the club back then also, and the dance scene in Berlin was super macho, gay, mask. And I think we were there kind of oh, we're genderless, just sort of floating in this. And then in the corner talking about poetry and Paul Celan and stuff. And feeling why doesn't anyone care? And it was a bit of this, how do we make them care about poetry, And they're all, doing what they're doing at the club. And so then, we had this whole kind of community or this network of friends at that time. We were quite young. I was 22 and she was 21. But it was really a desire to just try to get people to really pay attention to poetry. And back then it also didn't feel, poetry didn't feel as cool as it kind of feels today. I feel now there are readings all the time, but when I was, I don't know. It was not that was 2014. I don't know. It felt more precious or something. When people talked about poetry, there was a little bit more of this rolling of the eyes, or people in that scene would kind of also not take you seriously if you said you were a poet. So you would want to say that you were a writer, not a poet. So that's how we kind of started it. And then over the years, I think maybe because of the name, there was just this feeling because of the name, but also because she's my best friend. So it's a project that was started out of a deep love for each other and a love for each other's writing, and of also writing to each other and feeling poetry is at base a kind of social project because it's using the social material of communication. Its language is a material for communicating. And poetry does feel social, I don't know. I feel poets, because it's so hard to make money, the value ends up being really in community. What else do you have?
And you put out, just for those who don't know, you put out a lot of books. And some of them are by writers based in Berlin, but not all of them are by writers based in Berlin. It does have a little bit of a global network to it.
I feel we picked up people along the way. It was kind of people who reached out to us, but often it was people sort of adjacent to us. And we were never really putting out calls or really making a big presence out of it. It was really it was almost I don't know, we talk about publishing as the act of making public. So it was a little bit experimental in this way always, of thinking about publishing as being a kind of public performance.
And also, for those who don't know, I do think there's a real attention in what Tabloid is doing to the book as a form. Each project is chosen for its specific reasons, and then what's the process of finding how that book comes out into the world?
Yeah, it depends. When I was beginning to learn how to make books, I was really obsessed with the idea that, wow, a book doesn't have to just be a book, it can also be an object. And you can use all this other crazy different paper. And I was going to the printer and I was bringing them weird pieces of plastic and can you print on this? And then they would be really grumpy and they didn't want to print on it, but then I would make them anyway somehow. They were kind of a funny print shop in Austin. So each one was really thinking the size is important, I mean, in some ways it seems like young, and maybe because I'm based in Berlin and there's so many fabulous designers there who are already thinking about this, but it was really like, the book is more than just a vessel for the text. It's also a sculpture. It's also an object. It can reflect more too. So I guess a part of it was thinking that way. I'm thinking of this one book, Commuter, that was one of the really early experiments of my own writing, but it was from a journal that I had written on the train. And on the cover it has the S-Bahn that I mentioned, the logo of it, and it's in the green of the logo of the train, and it's basically just the size of a tiny little pocket notebook. And the text is quite big on the inside too. But this kind of felt like, okay, I want something very fast and bold, and that kind of you absorb almost like an advertisement in itself.
So Tabloid is a collaboration, and your novel, your poet's novel, which is out now. There it is. Should we do a little show and tell from the pocket of Agent Dickinson?
But this is not from Tabloid.
No, it's not. But it is a collaboration.
Yeah, it's another collaboration, yeah.
So I wanted to ask about that collaboration and how it features into your practice.
I love people. I really love people, and I love working with people. I think maybe in some ways it's also another constraint, you know? You have to kind of find a way to bridge your two practices, and it doesn't always work. But I think we were talking about it a little bit, and there is this kind of aspect of like, I like being a shapeshifter. I am a shapeshifter. Like, I do feel like I'm always changing. And if I have a collaborator, there's kind of always this opportunity to sort of see what else I can do, whether it is through like mimicry, whether it's through balance or mirroring. But there's this really exciting potential with collaboration where you kind of discover like new masks to put on or new costumes or something. I think that can also happen that as you work with somebody, the longer you work with them, then those roles get cemented. But but I think, collaboration also is this kind of like testing of your own limits, and it's also letting go. And I think ultimately, like, especially with this book, Elise and I, around the time when we finished it, we're like, who wrote this? Like, it's like somebody else wrote the book. It's like a third voice, which I think is Flanagan. But it's like he wrote that, because also in going back through it, because it was written with that intense constraint, I can't tell who wrote what word. I know the elves are her. She kept putting the elves in, but then at a certain point I was putting elves in too. So, yeah.
That does feel like a form of readerly writing to me, of kind of letting yourself be open to where the sentence is moving and not knowing what's possible.
Totally. Yeah.
And staying curious to it.
Yeah.
That is a collaboration that's ongoing, isn't it?
So we have a second book that we're in the middle of, yeah.
Wow. And is that what you're doing at Art Farm, or are you doing something with this book at Art Farm?
We're doing something with this book, TBD. But I think it'll be a lot of play. I'm not entirely sure if what we produce will end up being actually like for the public, or if it's really just about kind of getting into material practices together. Because all of our collaboration has been remote, so we'll see. But I'm hoping to weld and make some devices. We'll see. Yeah.
I guess I wanted to finally also ask about teaching. You know, you spoke a bit about being a shapeshifter, and I wanted to know how you experience teaching now in your career, and what that role is like for you. And yeah.
I really love teaching. My grandmother is also a teacher, like of art education. And I think that was also something that influenced me a lot as a kid or seeing that as a potential path. But teaching is like, I don't know, it's like also, I used to call it like my teacher drag, you know, like you, it's one place that I feel like I can, it's not authority. I think there's like really a balance between facilitating and teaching also that I try to kind of hold, where there is kind of like a final line where you are guiding people into something that is serious, kind of like this anecdote about Tom not wanting to trade. But then at the same time, I really just love this practice of working with people who are excited about it, excited about writing, who are maybe amateurs, who don't know what they're doing. I don't know, I feel like teaching also allows me to be kind of a perpetual amateur. Like there's always a kind of unknowing that I just love about that space. And like entering that into it and kind of everything becoming kind of leveled out.
Yeah. Yeah, you can tell how much play is in your work and how much you find ways for the speaker to occupy childlike wonder. So I guess finally I want to ask, now that the award is real, what do you hope to do with it?
I've been, this has been the busiest year of my life. So I've been talking a lot about taking a sabbatical from my life. Starting, I think, mid-December, but just for a month where I don't work. I haven't done that in a really long time, but like 1 month where I completely do not work, where I turn off my phone and people have to like come by and ring my bell to see me, and I turn off my Wi-Fi. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is about printing the next round of these pamphlets for tabloid. And with that, then there's studio equipment and paper and many things to acquire. But I'm really excited about this sabbatical, and I keep thinking about like a loose tie, like, like just wearing a loose tie in the winter in Berlin in my little house, and yeah, pretending to be a sailor for like a month. Yeah.
Well, Zack, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Eliza. I just wanted to quickly thank Brendan Byrne for helping us with the AV, as well as Harry Wessels and the Grolier Club for hosting us. Yes, thank you. And all of you for joining us tonight. Please stick around. We do have some drinks if you didn't catch one on your way. And last but not least, thank Zack Darsee again for the poetry.